At the age of 64, Bob Paisley is retiring at Liverpool as the most successful manager in British football. It's been an amazing era, earning tribute tonight from one of the younger generation of football managers, Brian Clough.
But this place is going to seem a lot emptier now that Bob's decided to call it a day. But I'm not here to tell you how sorry I am that he's gone. Frankly, we're glad to see the back of him. Come on, I'll show you a few of the things he's won. Impressive, isn't it? I can remember playing at Liverpool many years ago when the trophies they won you could have fitted into a biscuit tin. Any manager looking at that lot tonight think a couple of them could be up for grabs next season. Well, let's go and find out what Bob's secret really is. This was Bob's office, and I'll bet when the pressure was on, it was the loneliest place in the world on occasions. Champions, European champions, all in the past. It looks more like a foreman's office on a wimpy estate. Hey up, that's what happened to Tommy Smith. Canny fella, isn't he? I don't think there's many secrets around here, but I'll tell you what, I'll mark your card where they are. Come on.
Over there, and he does this. You're in tonight. You should be back for 12.
Hello, Ron.
Hello, Brian. How are you, all right?
Fine, nice to see you.
Good.
Hello, right.
Sit down.
Lovely to see you, thank you. Well, this is the famous boot room, and I've been invited a couple of times over the last few years to have a couple of Newcastle brown ales. And they tell me this is where it's all been planned. And this is where a lot of it happened, and to tell you the truth, we were all wary of coming here.
Francis, dispossessed by Keegan. He's not got much support. Toshak to his left. Hughes. Case. And Case again. Toshak! What a wallop! Kennedy. Neil for Toshak's head. Keegan was already on the move into the box, and he's got it over the keeper's head. Toshak and Keegan, mind-reading again. Case lobbing it forward, header back by Lopez. And Fairclough is onside. This now could be interesting. Fairclough! Super sub! Strikes again! Neil extricating himself from trouble with great skill. Kennedy. Dalglish going right, but Dermot left, and could it be his hat-trick? Yes, it can! Johnson, and Johnson the ball into acres of empty space for Highway, and Highway a brilliant crossback. McDermott it was who finished it, and what a classic goal. Back in again by Hansen, Cannon heading it straight up in the air, Dalglish challenging, Gilbert there, Dalglish trying to smuggle his way through, and then chip it away from Burridge. What an astonishing goal by Kenny Dalglish.
Well, it's Liverpool doing some more attacking now. And it's Phil Neal. And West Ham have certainly got plenty back. McDermott playing it in. Dalglish! No, it falls for Shankly. And what about that for a ball? Inviting Ian Rush to make a charge, to take it round Price, to play it for David Johnson. Stopped by Clements, but it's not away yet. Rush! 3-1. Dalglish. Watson had a wave at him. Souness!
I think I have three things in common with Bob Paisley. We don't go socialising at do's. We don't like chairmen who are always in the newspapers. And we've both been successful at our jobs. When it comes to winning things, though, Bob is way out on his own. He's won the League Championship 6 times and the League Cup 3 times. He's not done too badly on the continent either. That's for a bloke whose idea of sophistication is a cloth cap, a woolly cardigan and a visit to the racing stables. Bob won the European Cup 3 times. He's also won the UEFA Cup and the Super Cup. But what a pity about the FA Cup. It's eluded him both as a player and as a manager. Mind you, it was the only thing that did, but at least he shared the joy of Bill Shankly's final triumph in 1974.
And Newcastle at the moment looking just a little disorganised. Here's Hall. And now a chance for Keegan. And that's it! Kevin Keegan! A backheader there by Toshak now for Highway. Number 2, Steve Highway. Turned inside for Highway. Playing it again for Smith. What a good move. Oh, and yes, it's there by Keegan.
2 months later, Shanks retired and Bob took over. And what he's achieved in the 9 years since then will never be equalled. You take my word on that. Bob had a castle when he started. It had been built by Bill, an incredible man. I loved him like a father. But Bob had to do it his way.
There's no way anybody imitating can be great. If you want to do it, you've got to be yourself. If you stray away from that line, there's nothing for you. You've got to be yourself. And if that at the end of the day is not good enough, then you've just got to accept that. I couldn't go on and say things or do things that Bill did, but I could do them in a more cunning sort of way.
Yes, and I've always given him 10 out of 10 for that kind of shrewdness. A football club chairman, he makes one decision every 3 years, and that's appointing a manager. A manager makes 5 or 6 or 7 major decisions every year. People wondered, you know, if Bob wanted that responsibility. And to be fair, he wasn't so sure himself.
And I thought I was the buffer. And I would willingly do that type of thing when I took off and that. And what's happened since is nobody's business.
The story goes that on his first day as Liverpool manager, Bob stood with his back to the wall, a position some of us have been in many times, and said to his players, you know, I didn't want this job in the first place. Most of the players had known him since he was a trainer. They had to adjust to this new relationship.
It'll be strange to start off with because we've always known him as Bob, you know, until we knuckle down the fact that he is the new boss, you know. I mean, we might say things that you wouldn't naturally say to a boss if he'd have come in from outside, you know, but I think we'll both have to learn, you know.
It was not long before everybody acknowledged Bob's quality as a manager. His judgment and timing were perfect when it came to buying players. And the signing of Kenny Dalglish to replace Kevin Keegan was not far short of a miracle. Keegan, remember, had said he was going to play abroad. And at that time, in 1977, Keegan was giving a high level of performance. In Dalglish, Bob found a player who could do all the things Keegan did, and some of them even better. This young man was always my idea of Player of the Year.
Defence had come out for offside, but didn't make it. Case. Dalglish, he's wriggled round McElroy, he's lost Buchan, he's got a chance, what a goal! Dalglish, never quite sure which way he'll turn. And got it back onto his left foot.
Dalglish, Whelan is the Liverpool player jumping, Dalglish collects. Liverpool probing forward again, and Dalglish has made space for himself. And tried to curl it, and does! A great moment for a master craftsman. It's his 300th goal in senior club football for Celtic and Liverpool.
Liverpool have always bought a certain type of player. The type who may be a star where he is, but doesn't mind being a star among stars at Liverpool. Ray Kennedy is a good example of this. He had won the league and the FA Cup double as a striker with Arsenal. But he had to change his role to suit Liverpool's needs.
Balls for David Johnson, with a chance to have a run at McQueen. McQueen getting back now, Highway. And Kennedy on the left foot, which is his good foot, and it's in!
Dalglish, clever little nod off for Kennedy. Oh! Phillips didn't see it. Kennedy. Dalglish to Kennedy. Dermot through the middle. Fairclough. And Dalglish. Let it run for Lee. Superb move by Liverpool.
Bob's decision to play Kennedy on the left side of midfield was an absolute masterstroke.
Ray Kennedy was one of the best moves that I ever made. I think if I was to have a census from the European clubs in that period, there would be a few would be voting for Ray.
Robert arrived at Liverpool from the northeast in 1939 and was a wing half in their championship-winning side of 1947. He became a qualified physiotherapist, reserve and then first-team trainer, a coach, then the manager, a wily old fox. You know, a lot of rubbish is talked about running a football team. Firstly, obviously, you need to have ability, and the judgment of players is absolutely essential. Secondly, a hell of a lot of common sense. Now, what's all this bit about coaching? Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's making sure the players get to the ground on time for training, telling a player to settle down in his personal life, telling your goalkeeper not to walk on his hands, but to use them to catch the ball. Bob knew how to be hard without being too loud. He'd got a different style to Shanks.
If I can go down the street and nobody recognises me, I'm delighted in that. And let's face it, Bill didn't do that. Bill always wore steel tips on his shoes so that people could hear him coming. I was always taught, my headmaster told me, he said, if you want to tell anybody anything, he said, speak softly. And he said, you'll find that they're trying to listen to you. You know, they're trying to get what you're going to say. And if you shout at them, or, you know, then they're not interested, really. So if you talk softly to them, and that's the approach that I've tried to take on.
I was once in Bob's office, you know, talking over a possible deal for Terry McDermott. Bob had a fridge in there, and he opened it to offer me a beer. There was mould inside the fridge. I said, hey, you know, let's have a cup of tea instead. Not one of football's flashy types, Robert. The best way to benefit from him is to watch his team play. We at Forest learned from Liverpool, and Bob knew it. He even had a bet on us to win the European Cup when we knocked them out late in 1978.
Really right on top of his game tonight. Oh, yeah. Little flick up. Woodcock and Paisleys has got it. Girdles cuts through on his own. The pace and confidence to do it. Not a bad-looking cross. Woodcock. And a superb goal from Barrett.
That was the second time we cost him a trophy. Remember the 1978 League Cup final replay?
Woodcock, a good ball for O'Hare. He's in a marvellous position. He was tripped. I think Mr. Partridge is given the penalty. Robertson versus Clements.
For a while, we had the Indian sign on Liverpool. We knew it, they knew it, and it bothered them. Liverpool's style of play has evolved over many years, and some of their best ideas have come from the boot room at Anfield. There's no mistake about this boot room. It's the fellas who use it that matter. Bob, Joe Fagan, Ronnie Moran and Roy Evans. This is where they like to do a lot of the talking and compare notes on which players are doing what. I've been in there after matches, and all I got was a drink, an occasional well done, or bad luck and away. There's an interesting philosophy behind the way it happened.
At the end of the day, and I thought, well, the only thing they can do and say, look, come in and have a drink, win, lose, or draw. You can come in, irrespective of what words we'd had or anything, and the game's a sport, really. And that's the attitude, and it's just snowballed from there, and the lads have taken it over, and now it's, you know, it's a legend, that group. It's good. There's a lot of talk goes off in there, and it's interesting because you're always interested in what people think about your own players, and they tell you more about your own players than you really know yourself, or vice versa, like.
All this thought, effort, experience and expertise got the Liverpool bandwagon rolling smoother than ever.
I'm very proud tonight that to be acclaimed champions, but it was the way that we did it that pleased me.
Well, he's got to be manager of the year. I mean, who else can beat him now? I mean, there's nobody. Nobody at all. The only fella who can possibly do him is this fella up in Scotland. But our league's a hell of a lot harder league to win. But in the final of the UEFA Cup, it's got to be manager of the year. I don't care what anybody says.
This is my proudest moment being at Liverpool, that I'm a manager, that they won the championship, which is the greatest competition in the world, and I'm proud to be a Liverpudlian tonight, I can assure you.
And that was only the start.
Over the heads of the defenders, and Lambert chasing and scoring! Turn by Lekens to De Kuba. De Kuba gets it back from Koos. Lambert. Koos! 2-0! Bastein's caught a little bit out of position by Keegan. Highway. Bringing in Kennedy. Great goal! Keegan turning brilliantly. Kennedy again. And Case. 2-2. Not away by De Kuba. Highway. Going past Bastein's. Penalty. The goalkeeper is off his line. Mr. Biversi is saying to him, go back. And Keegan comes up now and sends it the wrong way.
In 1976, Bob repeated what Bill Shankly had accomplished 3 years earlier. He added the UEFA Cup to the league title. Liverpool completed the job in Bruges with a 1-1 draw in the second leg to take the trophy with a 4-3 aggregate. Only 2 British clubs had succeeded in winning the European Cup: Celtic and Manchester United. Bob was ready to go for the big one and to face the kind of experience that can drive you balmy.
The Liverpool players still protesting, and it certainly looked as though Hughes played the ball there as Nekmi went down, but a penalty awarded against Liverpool. And Camille sent Clements the wrong way.
I honestly felt absolutely shattered when I went out for the game. You know, I said after it at half-time I could barely get up from the bench to get out for the second half. I felt very tired. I think it was the travelling and the time lapse. We missed 2 hours out and we never slept at all. The funniest part probably was about 5:30 in the morning. We'd try to get to sleep, and then all of a sudden there was a big microphone started blaring and a fella singing into you. Oh, it was unbelievable. You couldn't believe it.
That was definitely our worst experience in that. And, in fact, I didn't think that could happen in European football, but having said that, we've just got to forget about it and get on with the next game.
Bob did just that. Liverpool beat the Turks with a 3-1 aggregate. They went on to defeat one of those French sides, and Zurich, on the way to the 1977 European Cup final in Rome against the Germans from Borussia Mönchengladbach. Hey, let's not forget that Bob had retained the league and just lost an FA Cup final against Manchester United before setting off for Italy. He'll never forget that trip.
That we won was outstanding, but the thing that pleased me most was that Rome was a place that I'd been to during the war and that, and they had a particular fancy for the whole city and that, and the setting of the game and the weather, the supporters, they'd gone out there to enjoy themselves, and they were immaculate in the behaviour and the game and the performance that we did to win it. It was recognised throughout Europe, and that had to be the best moment of my life.
Here's Highway. McDermott darting ahead of him. Terry McDermott! A marvellous goal!
There's a lot of people wouldn't know they were in Rome that night, but I don't regret that. I wanted to savour every moment of that occasion and that. And, you know, inwardly, I was drunk, but I didn't take a drink for the simple reason that I just wanted to savour every moment.
I was to learn what it's like bringing a trophy home from Europe. The scenes when you arrive back are unbelievable. Elation, local pride, it's all on display. Let's face it, this game's all about the fans. Not enough of our lot remember that, but Bob always did.
And there is Bob Paisley with the European Cup. Welcome home, Liverpool. Emlyn Hughes, the skipper, with him.
The rate of unemployment in this country is a disgrace. And on Merseyside, it's appalling. That's why Liverpool is struggling for support like the rest of us. As a young man in the northeast, Bob worked at the top of a mine and on a building site. He could identify with the fans, and the respect was mutual. Those lucky enough still to have a job at the local car factory even had a close-up of the European Cup.
Liverpool's my adopted city now, and my type of people are so humorous. They laugh at some their own mistakes or something, and that at the end of the day, if it's provided a little bit of happiness for these people, and that, I'm satisfied with that. It's, you know.
It doesn't pay anybody to be deceived by the expression on Bob's face. Sometimes his smile is genuine. Sometimes it hides his true nature. He's as hard as nails and as crafty as they come. But his planning has been generally faultless, and he's deserved every bit of luck he's got. After we delayed him for 2 years by our triumphs at Forest, Bob went to Paris and completed a hat-trick in the European Cup. Back home, Bob was as greedy as ever. Only Forest and Villa have come between him and the First Division title since 1976. But it's not just that Liverpool have continued to win trophies. That's impressive enough. It's the way they've done it. In 1979, for example, they won the league title with a record 68 points and conceded only 16 goals, the fewest in the history of the First Division. The following year, they completed a record run of 59 home games without defeat. It goes on and on and on, attracting envy and admiration throughout the game and from every one of us.
I think he will go down in time as the greatest manager of all time. I don't think, even though he's won more than anything at this moment in time, that's been fully appreciated. I think in 2 or 3 years' time, people will look back and they'll look at all the greats of the game and he'll stand out on his own.
Well, Bob was in his last season when I came here as a player. I don't think he's changed over the years. He's always been a solid, down-to-earth, common-sense sort of fella. I think it would do anybody good to spend a couple of years here, and perhaps we'd have better footballers and a better football league at the end of it.
Canniness in Yorkshire is carefulness. Canniness in the northeast is niceness. A canny lad is a nice lad in the northeast, and that's what he is. And I remember saying once when he got the OBE, that used to stand for Other Buggers' Efforts, but in his case it stands for Our Bob Excels.
So much praise. So why then didn't Bob become the England team manager? It was a job I would have loved. But I said it should have been offered to him before Ron Greenwood, because Bob knew more about football. The fact is, Bob didn't want the England job. For one thing, he considered himself too old. For another, it would have meant performing for the media. He made sure he didn't have that pressure.
I think it's a specialist job, and a little bit more, you've got to be a bit more of a diplomat and well-versed in giving things off to, I mean, so easy to get misinterpreted in England, let alone in a foreign country and that. And I think you've got to have that gift too. And if there's one thing I preach is knowing your strengths and weaknesses. And I would have been going into a place where I might have been caught out, you know, from a verbal point of view.
Only bad managers need to talk a lot on television. The hardest part for Bob was at 20 to 5 on a Saturday when he had to deal with the media. but he was able to use his success as a shield. Some say Bob is narrow-minded. Most managers have minds like tunnels. In Bob's case, it's a wedge. Bill Shankly was much the same, you know. But Bill was larger than life. Bob, well, he's a bit of an introvert. And he never won any prizes for public speaking.
We won a lot of trophies, and as a captain at the school I had to speak, but I know the speech now. I'm glad to have won the cup as an honour to Appleton School, and you know, but that was the sum total of it, and I was glad to say that, and I would have been prepared just to say that on every other trophy that I've won.
When I saw Bob, he usually had a small sherry, and he talked about horses with my sidekick, Peter Taylor. That probably suited him better. It's long been his second sporting love, but it left me out in the cold. I don't know one end of a horse from the other. As a club, Liverpool have never totally reflected Bill Shankly's warmth, nor the warmth of Bob, Joe, Ronnie and Roy. It's as if the club want to keep their secrets safe. You know, Bob was always cautious.
I learned my lesson. I had 2 or 3 quotes, and then I thought, oh, you shouldn't have said that, really, because it didn't do the team any good. When the Saturday print, the Sunday print comes in after a Saturday's game and it's in black and white, Jessie, the wife, used to say, you know, you didn't say that. I said, well, I did, but I didn't mean it sort of that way. And it's so different when it goes down in black and white. At the end of the day, I turned round and said, I hope that the teams that I can produce can help me get over the verbal side of it. And in fairness, I think they've done that.
The amazing consistency of his team certainly has spoken volumes. Bob finally claimed the League Cup, and his skipper Phil Thompson collected it after they won the replayed final 2-1 against West Ham in 1981. The following year, Ronnie Whelan's goal sent the game against Spurs into extra time.
Dalglish couldn't get to it, but he might get to this. Villa going in there, using his shoulder. Johnson playing it in. Whelan!
And Bob used the breather to full advantage. Just you see how he refuses to let his players lie down. Now that's management. Of course they were tired, but the players weren't allowed to think about it. And I'll tell you what, Spurs weren't allowed to see it.
And now it's Dalglish. He's onside. Is this the decisive moment? He's played for Whelan, and he's done it again.
The match winner was Whelan. Yet another example of how Liverpool have kept the conveyor belt moving. It was this young man again who scored the winner in the final against Manchester United last March. It was Bob's 12th and final appearance at Wembley. And it was an absolute beautiful gesture, one of real feeling, when the players asked him to collect the trophy. It's the first time a manager has ever done that. League Cup or Milk Cup, you can call it what you like. I just know Bob lapped it up. And in 3 successive seasons. By hell, that's some hat-trick. It's always fascinated me how Liverpool have managed to let players leave the club without causing just a little ripple. A star drops out, but the team keeps on winning. John Toshak went with his bag full of medals. So did Ray Clements, a goalkeeper. I rated second only to Peter Shilton. Then Ray Kennedy, always a key figure, also moved on. More recently, Terry McDermott, another of the club's many internationals. He was sent on his way. Again, there was no outcry. He's done a lot of brilliant transfer business. I calculate he spent £5.5 million on 25 players over 9 years. He's had outstanding success, like Phil Neal, his first major signing in October 1974. Alan Hansen, a snip from Scotland at 100,000. Kenny Dalglish, the most outstanding buy in the summer of 1977. Sue Ness from Middlesbrough, and a lad called Mark Lawrenson. By hell, I wish I could have afforded him 2 years ago. They make many of their signings 12 months before they need them. And if they come off earlier in the first team, that's the bonus. Look at these faces from the Liverpool senior squad in 1974. You won't recognise any of them in this year's team picture, and they're still winning trophies. Bob has changed it all around. If anything, he's improved the quality. He's always bought the best, and the money's been made available to back his judgment. He sold 35 players and picked up £3.5 million in fees. So he's £2 million down on his deals. It's a cheap price to pay for success. Some clubs have spent more than that to be failures in half the time. I've competed for several players, the most recent being Craig Johnson. He signed for Bob. We'll always remember Bob as a winner, but even he suffered the odd setback. We're mostly lousy losers, but he's worse than that. Fortunately, he didn't lose that often.
I'm the worst loser in the game, really. Not, you can say, I mean, Shank was and all, but in our different ways, there wasn't a heap of the difference between us. Like, we might have reacted differently, but inwardly, we were both feeling the same. And the only thing possibly we had in common is that we wanted to win, and we were too bad losers.
Now Nunes. Zico demanding the ball, and Liverpool allow him to get it. And he's put Nunes in the clear here, and he's scored.
The Brazilian skills of Flamengo and their star player Zico were too much for Liverpool in the World Club Championship in 1981. But you still won't convince Bob that his team were 3 goals inferior out there in Japan. I sympathise. We made that long trip to Tokyo the year before and also lost. That tiring trip is no picnic. Not if you're expecting players to be at their peak. But I don't fancy that defeat left him feeling as badly as in 1977. Tommy Docherty's Manchester United pipped him after he'd led Liverpool to the FA Cup final and a bid for the only prize he needed to have swept up everything. But Bob's contribution to football has been acknowledged. He was awarded the OBE and has stepped up to receive the Manager of the Year award 5 times. And when you count up all his monthly awards as well, he must have won enough whiskey to flood the Mersey Tunnel.
Now his adopted city of Liverpool have acknowledged Bob's deeds. They plan to give him the freedom of the city. The Lord Mayor's a keen football fan, so he was absolutely delighted to pass on his personal congratulations.
I think Bob would have retired earlier but for the team's continued success. In fact, I thought he might have considered packing in when Forest beat Liverpool in the European Cup. But he bounced back again. The death of Bill Shankly in 1981 was upsetting for everyone who knew, admired and loved the man. Bob's always enjoyed good health, but at the start of this season, he had cause to consider his future.
We went on the pre-season tour, and that, and I got a little bit of a virus, as it turned out. And they told me what it was and that, and something to the medial ear and that, and I was just off balance for a few weeks. And at the time, it was frightening. I thought, well, you know, if you're going to be like that, it is. And then that sort of encouraged me to say, well, you know, get someone new. But it was right what they said. If you want to get players, you know, if you look and are ruthless enough to change players and that, and then you've got to look at yourself and say, you know, don't go beyond your limits like that.
Now Bob has a new problem. What does he do with the time on his hands? We all know he likes horse racing, but even a hobby can become a bit of a bore if you have too much of it. What's running through his mind now?
It's the only thing that I've ever done in my life, and when I was a youngster, I can go back to about 5-year-old, and that, and when the new year was being put in, you know, they was doing well. I stayed up to let the new year in, and I was kicking the ball. And this was a sign in the northeast that if you kick the ball through the new year, you'll be kicking it for the rest of your life. I've just got to sort of take it as it comes. I looked at I was out yesterday and getting some stuff for the wife for the garden and that. We're down at the marketing place there, and I thought, well, football's better than this. But
he left the manager's job in typical fashion, stretching Liverpool's record of league title wins to 14 and adding the championship trophy to the Milk Cup his team took last March. It's reassuring to know he'll win naught else. Good luck, Robert.
You don't even dream about these things. I'm quite sure of that. I don't know what I've won now, really. No way, no way. You don't even dream about that.